Chapter 21 Small Arc Reactor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Then Lucifer realized that Sky might have been physically blocked, otherwise, it would not be so outrageous that he could not track it. It can be said that Lucifer's hacking skills are at least the second in the world, and Sky is the first in the world, so he quickly tried to use his world's top-of-the-line computer, worth tens of millions of dollars, to invade Tony Stark's home, mainly to attack Jarvis. In order to obtain its core data and source code, Jarvis's counterattack was very fast and sharp, but Lucifer, who had faced Sky, said that these technical means were mediocre. Tony Stark got drunk and had sex with several young models and fell asleep, so that Jarvis's alarm kept ringing and could not wake him up. In the end, Lucifer broke through all the defenses of Jarvis in just 10 minutes, obtained the core data and source code, and deleted the traces of his invasion. Got it. Lucifer was very satisfied, and then his express delivery arrived. Ivan Vank and Anton Vank, father and son, were packed and shipped. After all, they are the masters of small arc reactor technology. Even if it is a backward palladium cold nuclear fusion reactor, they can only use this before Lucifer gets the molecular structure and atomic model of the new element, but there is no need to rush. Lucifer has been asking about the location of the map model. Once he knows where the map model is, he can get the new element by going there. Who are you? Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko, father and son, looked at Lucifer opposite with great excitement. Don't be nervous. I asked you to come here because I heard something. Lucifer knocked on the table with a gold lighter. He doesn't smoke, but it doesn't prevent him from using a lighter to show off his style. Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko didn't continue talking. They knew very well that the person who could kidnap them across the ocean must be extraordinary. Maybe it was the guy from the Stark family who wanted to silence him. Anton Vank thought so in his heart. After all, the only people he could think of who were related to them and had such strength were the bastards of the Stark family. I heard that you once worked with Howard Stark on an energy project, and then he slandered you for stealing his achievements and drove you out of the United States, Lucifer said meaningfully. That's right, Anton Vank said immediately. His expression was serious and he didn't look like he was lying, but it didn't matter. Lucifer only wanted their technology and had no interest in the truth of the year. I want that energy technology. Name a price. Lucifer said calmly. What? Anton Vank was startled, and so was Ivan Vank. They felt that the development of things seemed a little unexpected. It's not a safe thing to entrust the hope of revenge to others. It's better to do it yourself with money. Anyway, this world is a world of rich people. Only with money can you have power, right? Lucifer said. Now the father and son finally understood what Lucifer wanted to do. He wanted their technology, gave them money, and encouraged them to take revenge. Even researchers are not so easy to fool. They just look stupid, but in fact, it is because their brains are all focused on other things and don't care about these trivial matters. Otherwise, it may not be the turn of ordinary people to govern. Can these geniuses really not govern better than ordinary people? Of course not. Don't worry, I am a very credible person and will not kill people to silence them. I am a qualified businessman. As long as you give me technology, I will pay, and then we will be even. Then you can go wherever you want. Lucifer said nonchalantly. By doing this, he also gave Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko starting funds and funding. The original plot of Hammer Industries' Mechanical Soldiers can only be said to be shoddy. Of course, it can also be said that Ivan Vanko used all the good materials on his armor, but this is not important. Lucifer strengthened Ivan Vanko, and maybe he could get a good monster in the future. Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko were doubtful and they whispered to each other in Russian. Actually, you don't have a choice now, right? Either believe me or you'll be solved before you start your revenge. Lucifer interrupted their private communication. You want the technology of a small arc reactor, no problem, we'll give it to you, but you have to give us $10 billion. Ivan Vanko said to Lucifer. 10 billion is not a small amount. Lucifer said calmly. But that technology is worth the price. Ivan Vanko said coldly. Although the two of them were down and out, they were both high-level intellectuals that 99% of the people in the world couldn't compare to. How could they not know the value of their technology? Okay, deal, but you only have one chance. Once I find out it's fake or incomplete, I'll immediately send you to Siberia to dig potatoes, and then you'll never be able to take revenge. Lucifer nodded. Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko did not say anything, but planned to start working now. Fortunately, Lucifer had already prepared a laboratory for them and also called all the scientific researchers. He himself watched with great interest. With all the equipment complete and beyond imagination, Ivan Vanko and Anton Vanko felt like they were enjoying themselves. Then they spent 5 days to successfully manufacture the first small arc reactor, that is the most crude version. The palladium plug-in version invented by Tony Stark was already a generation ahead. The one made by the Vanks could only be considered slightly more powerful than the one Tony Stark smashed in the cave, but it was far inferior to the second small arc reactor made by Tony Stark after he came back. If Lucifer hadn't watched the whole process, he would have thought that the two fathers and sons were playing a trick on him. You smashed out such a small arc reactor that was only slightly better than the cave version in the world's most advanced laboratory. Well, it was Lucifer's fault. He should have thought that Tony Stark had been updating and improving after inheriting Howard's research. After Anton Vanko was expelled, he was abandoned by the Russians because of his reputation. Naturally, he had no capital to continue researching this technology, and falling behind was inevitable. Although Lucifer wanted to complain about how heartless Mousy was, he was a scientific researcher who had worked with Howard, and he was just allowed to starve to death or freeze to death in his later years. What a waste of natural resources. Chapter 22 Superweapon. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Under the nervous eyes of Ivan Vank and Anton Vank, Lucifer did not break his promise and gave them a Swiss bank bearer account worth $10 billion, which can be accessed with the password. You have to pay attention to the radiation from this thing. Ivan Vanko looked at Lucifer and said. Thanks for the advice, I thought you wouldn't say it. Lucifer said with a smile. You know, that Ivan Vank was a little surprised. I'm not just from a good background. I'm no worse than you in this area of knowledge. What I lack is just the ideas to succeed. Lucifer shrugged. Ivan Vank was a little unbelievable. After all, Lucifer really looked like the kind of playboy who was ignorant and unskilled. The difference was that he would not kill people and silence them. Looking at the two father and son leaving, Lucifer could only wish them good luck. If they could really defeat Tony Stark with $10 billion, then Lucifer would feel that the $10 billion was well spent. Okay, now let's start my DIY. Lucifer's artificial intelligence has been created, and Lucifer calls it the Black Emperor, taken from the Black King in chess. According to Lucifer's instructions, the Black Emperor has produced the first steel suit, restoring the style of Iron Man's standard Mark II, except that Lucifer uses an all-black paint job. Super weapon. That's how Lucifer named the iron suit, and it felt right, although I don't know how the war machine in the original plot reserves so much ammunition. After all, it has shot so many robots, and the Gatling gun on its back can continue to fire bullets. Are you carrying tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition? However, the weapon Lucifer prepared for his super weapon was very simple, imitating the most lethal weapon of the Predator, the plasma shoulder cannon. The power of a plasma cannonball is equivalent to the energy intensity of the anti-tank and anti-armor missile Hellfire missile on the Apache helicopter gunship. It is already outrageous for a single soldier. You must also pay attention to whether it will be affected. To myself, all that's left is for Lucifer to find people from America's Ministry of Defense. Because his background seems unfathomable and he seems to have deep connections with the three major chaebol, people from the Ministry of Defense will soon follow him. Meet Shifa. Originally, they just thought Lucifer would come up with some advanced firearms, and even more outrageous, unexpected missiles, drones and other technologies, but as soon as Lucifer came up, he took them to see how the super weapon was tested against various weapons and various environments, and then their minds went crazy. This armor combines many concepts that I imagined, so when it was made, it also integrated many of the most advanced technologies in our company, such as high-tech material science, new energy technology, optical technology, and human body modification technology, etc. No one could hear Lucifer's words clearly. They were all shocked at the moment. This thing could actually fly, launch energy attacks, and ignore the protection of automatic rifle attacks. The whole thing was full of a sense of grandeur. Its aiming status will be reflected in the helmet's visual processor. At this time, the combatant can choose to fire according to their own will, or they can let the weapon fire automatically. That's enough, Mr. Lucifer, I want to know, the price of this weapon, that the Ministry of National Defense sent a lieutenant general. He originally thought that he was here to accompany Lucifer to vent his imagination, but he never expected that this guy was really a genius. However, Lucifer showed a troubled expression. Because its manufacturing process is very cumbersome and the cost is quite high, it is difficult to achieve mass production. It is difficult for us to make profits by selling it as a commodity. No need to worry, Mr. Lucifer, I think the American government can still afford the price. The Lieutenant General of the Ministry of National Defense said confidently. Really? This super weapon is worth at least $10 billion. Can the Ministry of National Defense really afford it? Lucifer questioned, and the Lieutenant General of the Ministry of Defense immediately coughed violently. Lucifer, sir, are you kidding me? The Lieutenant General of the Ministry of National Defense said that if this was Lucifer expressing humor, it would definitely be the coldest humorous joke he had ever heard. Of course not. I'm quoting the price very seriously. Do you think it's expensive? Then I'll let you understand why it's so expensive. Lucifer said to him coldly as if he was stimulated, then there are various world-first and world-leading technologies that are displayed one by one with pictures showing that the whole world is researching them, but Lucifer has already researched them and combined these advanced technologies into a super weapon. It is a veritable super weapon. No weapon can compare with it, except that it is a little too expensive. The Lieutenant General of the Ministry of National Defense was obviously convinced, with a hesitant and troubled expression on his face. What's more, Europe and Asia have also expressed interest. Lucifer then dropped a bombshell. What? Lieutenant General Egelius's eyes widened. Which one could it be, Europe or Asia? Isn't it America's biggest enemy on Blue Star? These damn big plutocrats don't care about America's interests at all. If Lucifer really sells super weapons to Asia and Europe, America will be restricted and oppressed in this regard. This is absolutely unacceptable. As for whether Lucifer dares to sell it, isn't this nonsense? With his background, what's the problem with selling it? Money is power. I will contact Mr. President immediately. Please don't worry, Mr. Lucifer. America is definitely the most generous customer. Lieutenant General Egelius said immediately, and he also knew that he couldn't handle this matter, so he contacted his superiors directly. After hearing this, the superiors were very confused. They never expected to encounter such an unimaginable development. How could reality suddenly become so magical? No, science fiction. But they were decisive enough and quickly placed an order and bought one. This is not surprising. Even if Lieutenant General Egelius promised solemnly, they had to get a sample for testing first, and by the way, see if they could crack the technology on it. It feels that the technologies on this super weapon are very valuable and leading the world. Lucifer naturally has his own insurance measures. The biggest difference between his super weapon and Tony Stark's Iron Man suit is that the super weapon has 3 small arc reactors, one to maintain the energy consumption of flight, one to maintain the energy consumption of plasma shoulder cannon, and one to maintain the energy consumption of various functions of the super weapon. This makes the super weapon's continuous combat time much longer than the Iron Man suit. Of course, when changing small arc reactors, more can be exchanged, which is where the real money is made. Chapter 23 G-Virus. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. It's like everyone who sells arms knows that the real value is not the guns, but the bullets. Have you ever seen anyone who needs to buy ammunition after buying a gun? This is where super weapons make money. Of course, Lucifer's behavior of selling steel armor is naturally not for making money. It's not easy to make money, so before America's order is delivered, Lucifer has already contacted Asia and Europe. There are also people who are stupid and rich, and have passed the door of the permanent members of the Security Council 3 times without entering a certain country. These countries certainly have no shortage of money to buy super weapons, and they are also very interested in super weapons. The country in Asia wants to buy them back and copy them. Europe is very generous. Unlike America and Asia, they only want to buy 1, and the Russians in Europe want 2. The Indians who are stupid and rich and come quickly want 10. Lucifer is spreading super weapons to stimulate a new round of military competition. It is no exaggeration to say that super weapons, a new concept of strategic weapons, have a very strong restraint on most current weapons. From the perspective of the Air Force alone, it can fly as fast as the fastest fighter, but it is more flexible than it, and because of the magical shock absorption system, the super weapon user can make various high-intensity maneuvers. Plus the plasma shoulder gun turret on the shoulder that can turn 360 degrees to aim. It is not a problem for a super weapon to destroy a fighter squadron. It is also deadly to ground forces. The speed of the super weapon can reach 300 km per hour. At the same time, because it is a power armor, the super weapon is very strong. It may be a bit difficult to lift a tank, but it is no problem to lift an infantry fighting vehicle. Now because it is just a rough concept, countries are not very clear. When they put super weapons into military operations, they will soon realize the strategic significance and value of super weapons. Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, in the headquarters building, a bald black man wearing an eye mask and a fierce look hidden in the dark is checking the latest intelligence. He is the famous director of the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau, Nick Fury. Super weapon. Although the cooperation between the American military and the Umbrella Corporation is very secretive, there are also agents lurking in the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau within the military, not to mention that Lucifer's Umbrella Corporation has no intention of hiding it, so the information was obtained smoothly. What's more fortunate is that this agent is not a Hydra, so Nick Fury was able to get the information. Otherwise he should be kept in the dark, and then the Hydra people would contact the Umbrella Corporation to buy super weapons. After reading the performance evaluation and various data about the super weapon, Nick Fury couldn't sit still. This is a war weapon that is beyond the times. Umbrella Corporation. Why haven't I heard of any information about this company before? No matter what, this company that can invent and manufacture super weapons must not be ignored, but he soon found out why he hadn't heard of it before, because this Umbrella Corporation was only established recently. As for the background, the 3 major chaebols and the president of the Umbrella Corporation seem to have an unclear relationship. This is a big shot. Even if the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency is not afraid, there is no reason to take the initiative to provoke him, unless he does something that harms the world. However, the investigation of Lucifer has not found anything, and his past experience is completely blank. This shows that the other party is also well connected, of course. It is also possible that the people behind him are well connected. Troublesome guy. Nick Fury frowned. What Lucifer can think of, Nick Fury naturally can't fail to think of. This kind of unimaginable weapon will definitely trigger a new round of military competition. However, for the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, it seems to be a good thing, because in this way, international disputes and conflicts may not be so serious and frequent, and everyone is busy paying money to eliminate armaments. But Nick Fury will not let Lucifer and Umbrella Corporation go so easily, so he plans to monitor Umbrella Corporation and Lucifer, and Lucifer. He is studying a dangerous thing, Tyrant Cell. The super dangerous species Tyrant has retained its terrifying evolutionary and adaptability in the Marvel world. In Lucifer's view, it may be directly regarded as the G virus. The difference is that the evolution and adaptation of Tyrant cells can be controlled, while the mutation of G is completely uncontrollable. What Lucifer has to do is to make the erosion ability of Tyrant cells stronger, so that it can erode normal human cells at a very fast speed, and eventually become the biochemical monster that Lucifer wants. Of course, Lucifer will use very humane clones for experimental subjects. Normally, being eroded by Tyrant cells will turn into a living tyrant, but it can still maintain its own sanity, which means that Tyrant cells will not kill the host's brain cells and thinking ability. Otherwise Tatsumi should have lost his mind like a beast. this is very good in Lucifer's view, but turning into a dragon does not meet his requirements, so some mechanisms and abilities of Tyron cells must be technically castrated. If it is controlled and influenced from the microscopic field, there is no problem, and it is also very easy. After all, no matter how powerful it is, it cannot change the problem of cells itself. And the genes of clones are also easy to say, just extract from a retired soldier. Umbrella Corporation has now recruited many retired soldiers, especially retired soldiers from America, basically don't know what to do after retirement, but they have no guarantee of retirement, a group of people who only know how to kill people. When they retire, they don't know what to do at all. They only have experience in killing people, so it is easy for retired soldiers to rob banks and other things to happen. However, now because of the Umbrella Corporation, these retired soldiers have a way out. Lucifer attaches great importance to their experience. Although everyone knows the quality of American soldiers, they have experienced countless actual combat, and anyway, they are just clone experiments, so who cares about them? A clone was placed on the experimental table, and the mechanical arm next to it pushed the cells in a syringe into the clone's body. Erosion begins. The Black Emperor made a cold report. 1%, 10%, 50%. Visible changes appeared on the clone. Chapter 24 Biological Weapons. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Lucifer watched the clone undergo drastic changes in a very short period of time. The influence of manipulation at the cellular level made the clone resistant to high temperatures and corrosion. Its skin was as tough as titanium alloy, and its muscles expanded several times. In the end, it turned into a head that was more than 2 meters tall. The muscles in its body were so strong that it seemed to explode. The sharp claws on its hands protruded from the flesh, as sharp and slender as blades. There is a buffering and shock-absorbing layer inside the muscles, which can effectively resist impact. There is also an insect-like exoskeleton in the flesh. The researchers quickly analyzed and studied the monster. Because of the memory of the clone, the monster was very obedient. Hunter, its name is Hunter. Lucifer was originally going to be called Tyrant, but after thinking about it carefully, I felt that the name Hunter was more suitable for this monster. According to tests, its skin is very strong. Even a 12.7 caliber automatic rifle cannot break through the defense. Rocket launchers and other individual anti-tank weapons only break through the skin and flesh, but cannot shake the exoskeleton carapace in the flesh. The Hunter itself inherited Tyron's unreasonable material non-conservation regeneration ability. As long as it is not damaged to the core, it is equivalent to immortality. It has a high degree of intelligence and can understand commands, and the super vitality of Tyron cells itself makes up for the problem that the mature clone only has a lifespan of a few years, which means it has a long standby time and does not require maintenance. The strength is also amazing, enough to lift hundreds of meters of heavy objects, and the body's ability to withstand pressure is also very strong. Especially the blade-like claws on both hands, which are very similar to the male protagonist in the original Murderer, Alex Mercer. In its claw form, it can easily split titanium alloys. Combined with the Hunter's own terrifying strength, it can probably split even tanks. Boss. It's amazing, we have created such a powerful biological weapon, that the scientific researcher was originally worried about the situation in the movie where the experimental subjects lost control and went on a killing spree. Even though he, as a scientific researcher, was well aware of the various loopholes in the security measures, he couldn't resist that kind of imagination. It turned out that such a terrifying monster as the Hunter can actually be affected and controlled by the memory implanted during the clone period. It can also understand commands. It can even do simple math problems and speak, but its language ability is too weak. This kind of controllable biological weapon will definitely sell like crazy. Lucifer is very calm. The Hunter is actually a product that has been castrated and has its abilities severely reduced. There is nothing to be happy about. The intact Tyron cells may be able to give birth to a doomsday in the Marvel world. Cells like this that have been sliced from the microscopic realm, even if they are obtained by others, will lose the ability to corrode infection and will not cause a second infection. Otherwise, the Marvel universe may stage a Resident Evil Tyron version. Keep making it. Lucifer has no intention of openly selling hunters. The public may not be able to accept biological weapons with this style of painting. Unlike super weapons, hunters, or in other words, many people, have a subconscious fear of biological weapons. Super weapons are enough, and biological weapons like hunters are only suitable for secret transactions. Wasn't the original Umbrella Company secretly trading biochemical weapons? This led to so many biochemical terrorist attacks in the Resident Evil universe, and people there were already used to it. Big countries disdain the use of biological and chemical weapons. Only small countries will desperately use biological and chemical weapons because they are cheap. This is because the positioning of Umbrella's biological and chemical weapons is very awkward. Even the Tyrant, which looks very powerful, is only sold for about the same price as an infantry fighting vehicle, and it follows the path of small profits but quick turnover. As for who the hunter should be sold to, Lucifer already has a target. No matter who he gives it to, he will not be rejected. The beard in the Middle East, Persia, the country of Korea and Japan, Cuba, if the hunter is sold to them, they can cause trouble. Bigger news is coming, and umbrella companies will also gain immeasurable resources. If he sells hunters to any country, he will become a super arms dealer surpassing Tony Stark, specializing in biological and chemical weapons. The funds obtained may account for more than 30% of a country's total military expenditures. Even those countries will allocate special funds to fund their continued research. Even if biological weapons are not used openly for the sake of public opinion, during military operations, whether I have used biological weapons, as long as it is not disclosed, who can know? This will be a new arms race. After seeing the strength of these hunters, all countries will rush to buy them, and the dark clouds of the Cold War will once again hang over the world. And the biggest winner in this competition will be the Umbrella Company that has mastered the hunter manufacturing technology. As long as a country uses hunters on a large scale, its neighboring countries and competing countries will also use it, and its neighboring countries and competing countries will also use it. Under this chain reaction, the whole country will soon use it. The world will be involved. But don't worry, because Lucifer's eyes are never on Earth. There are too few monsters on Earth, but there is an entire Kree Empire and an entire Skrull Empire in the universe. There is also the Nara Zerg waiting for him. So Lucifer plans to first improve the status of the Umbrella Company on Earth, and then develop the power of the Umbrella Company, and then enter the universe. As for why he, a Kryptonian, doesn't go to the universe by himself, nonsense. The universe is so big, relying on himself, I don't know how many years it will take to fly out of the solar system, not to mention going to the universe to fight monsters. Even the universe overlords of the level of Thanos and King Frisia have to develop a lot of subordinates and forces, and Lucifer is naturally no exception. Compared with super weapons, the price of hunters is very cheap. Lucifer asked for $100 million each. Anyway, the cost is very low. The clone machine produces clones, and hundreds or thousands can be produced at one time. Without considering the survival time of the clones, Lucifer can directly ripen them and then implant memories. Then Lucifer met with the Afghan terrorist leader, where the situation is very tense. Hundreds of Umbrella Company mercenaries were fully armed to guard Lucifer, but Lucifer felt that there was no need to be so nervous, because there was a hunter for demonstration next to him. Then a man in a white Arabian robe appeared with his men. Because of their sensitive identities, they would not meet in America itself, but somewhere like the America Pier. Chapter 25, Hunter Attacks. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The buyer of the transaction was Ben Haas from the Middle East. You can tell from his attire that he is very rich. My friend, the Lord will bless you. Ben Haas hugged Lucifer as soon as he came up. The mercenary next to him just wanted to stop him but was stopped by Lucifer shaking his head. My friend, welcome to America, but I think you don't like it here, so let's get straight to the point. This is the weapon I want to sell you, the biological weapon, the hunter. It is as obedient as a dog. Lucifer did not need a translator, and the communication with Ben Haas was unimpeded. Ben Haas then looked at the hunter introduced by Lucifer, and then he widened his eyes. After all, the hunter's unimaginable existence is still very shocking, but he couldn't resist the next instructions given by Lucifer, such as reaching out, squatting, and so on, just like training a dog, but the hunter is not a dog. It looks very visually impactful, and Ben-Haz couldn't help but approach the hunter. If he had this hunter, he might be able to drive away the hateful U.S. military and break the control of the 10 rings over Afghanistan. How much? Ben-Haz found that the hunter ignored him when he approached. It seemed that it was not as scary as it looked. $100 million ahead. It has the combat power to destroy an armored formation. The way to control it is to let it remember your voice, and then others can't control it. It will only obey your orders. Lucifer said that this hunter is a new hunter. It has most of the most commonly used languages in the world, so it can understand most commands. I want 100. Ben-Haz said immediately, really don't take money as money. Lucifer nodded with satisfaction. 100, maybe the U.S. military in Afghanistan will be uprooted by him. However, Afghanistan is not only the enemy of the U.S. military, but also the 10 rings. Of course, the 10 rings in this Marvel universe are probably not as powerful as in the comics. Happy cooperation. Lucifer delivered the goods readily, and Ben-Haz quickly deposited the money into an account, and then Lucifer left. Ben-Haz is obviously not a very patient person. After getting these biological weapon hunters, he tried them and was shocked by the hunters' combat power, so he was ecstatic and began to plan to attack the U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Commander of the U.S. troops in Afghanistan, Lieutenant General John Scott. Scott graduated from the U.S. Army Officers Academy, Lieutenant General of the Army, served as the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division, the commander of the NATO Ground Forces, and has rich connections in the military and political circles. The entire U.S. military force in Afghanistan includes the 2nd Battalion of the 160th Aviation Combat Regiment, the 87th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Brigade of the 10th Mountain Division, the 187th Infantry Regiment of the 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division, etc. This military force alone is enough to daunt anyone. The situation in Afghanistan is quite complicated. The relationship between the U.S. troops in Afghanistan and the 10 Rings gang is actually quite ambiguous. The two sides have a common enemy and often cooperate to jointly attack the Taliban. The U.S. military even sends personnel to train the armed personnel of the 10 Rings gang. Late at night, at a U.S. military base, there were more than 500 fully armed American soldiers stationed here, as well as various military Hummers and infantry fighting vehicles. Ben-Haz appeared here with his men and 5 hunters. Attack, destroy them all, and leave no one behind. Ben-Haz gave orders to the hunters, and the 5 hunters began to run wildly towards the U.S. military base. They ran very fast, even up to about 300 kilometers per hour, but they were somewhat affected by the desert environment, but the impact was not great. The U.S. military base soon discovered the 5 hunters' attack. Stop and accept inspection, otherwise we will use lethal firepower. Repeat, stop and accept inspection, otherwise we will use lethal firepower. After the warning was fruitless, the U.S. military decisively opened fire. The sound of the machine gun made the silent night suddenly noisy, but to the surprise of the U.S. military, the intensive shooting of the 2 M2 machine guns only repelled the opponent. The hunters' defense against machine guns was not weak, but the huge impact carried by the machine gun bullets themselves was not a joke. However, the hunter was still able to move forward despite the bullets, but the speed was not as fast as before. At the same time, the U.S. military base was also awakened by the gunshots. Most of the U.S. soldiers hurriedly stood up, and the commander of the military base, Colonel Mike, also stood up cursing. What happened? Colonel Mike found that the base seemed to have become hurried. We were attacked, and the target has not been killed, sir. An American soldier immediately said to Colonel Mike. What? Colonel Mike was stunned. Who is the enemy? At this time, the hunter took advantage of the machine gun bullets to jump a long distance and landed in the military base. Then he started killing. At this distance, the hunter was a terrifying killer. Without air support, the ground troops basically had no power to fight back against the hunter. The anti-tank mines, anti-tank infantry guns, and tank main guns that could effectively kill the hunter could not hit the fast-moving hunter. Ah, don't kill me. An American soldier was caught up by the hunter, and then he cut him into 10 pieces along with his bulletproof vest and gun with one claw. Ben-Haz and his men watched all this with binoculars from a distance. "Ha ha ha, that's it, destroy these damned American lackeys." Ben-Haz didn't expect the hunter to be more powerful than he imagined. So far, the hunter has caused hundreds of American soldiers to be injured, but they themselves have no casualties. In fact, with such dense firepower, the hunter will still be injured. After all, water drops wear away stones, not to mention that bullets are much more powerful than water drops. It's just that the hunter has a strong recovery ability. Even if he is injured, he can recover quickly and look like he is not injured. Then Colonel Mike finally couldn't help it. With this level of casualties, he probably had to go to military court. Use the maximum force, Colonel Mike ordered. So, originally the hunter was shot with a spark at most, but now the place where he was shot was actually emitting yellow smoke. This is a depleted uranium armor-piercing bullet. Anti-armor weapons used by the U.S. military in the Gulf War. Depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets are armor-piercing bullets made of uranium-238. When it hits an armor target, it will generate a high temperature of 6,000 degrees Celsius, causing great damage to the target's protective armor and killing people inside the armor. This bullet also has a certain degree of radioactivity, and even if the person hit is not killed on the spot, he will be killed by the radioactive elements. It is for this reason that depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets are out of the scope of conventional bullets, so the U.S. military has not used this bullet in combat. Chapter 26 Arrogance. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The U.S. military's M2 machine gun kept spraying depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets at the hunters. The 5 hunters who were originally unharmed were finally injured. The physical fitness of the hunters has long surpassed that of ordinary people, so their injuries were not serious. The bullets were unable to follow up after penetrating their exoskeletons. After barely piercing the hunter's carapace-like skin, they got stuck in the dense muscles. This level of trauma was not enough to kill the hunters, but the high temperature generated by the depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets and the stinging pain caused by the radioactive element still caused them great pain. The pain caused the hunters to become crazy and attack the soldiers who used depleted uranium armor-piercing bullets. Even if their internal organs were injured, the hunters' tenacious vitality allowed them to ignore these effects. Use anti-tank rocket launchers. The commander said angrily. Since anti-tank rocket launchers are anti-tank, hunters should have no problem with them. The reason why it was useless at first was that it was unnecessary. Secondly, it was in one's own base. Who would be responsible if someone missed the target and caused accidental damage? But now that the ban has been lifted by force, and it's been forced, I can't care so much anymore. For soldiers were seen holding rocket launchers, aiming at the hunters who were doing crazy damage. One soldier was killed before firing, but 3 rounds were fired successfully. The anti-tank rocket launcher was enough to cause damage to the hunters, but the hunters showed agility beyond their expectations. Not only did they avoid the rockets fired, but they also got closer to the fire points. In just 1 hour, every American soldier in this U.S. base was killed. Although Colonel Mike requested support very early, the U.S. drone was still late in arriving. As a result, nothing was left. U.S. military base. Of course, the bearded Ben-Haz will not be satisfied with this attack, and this attack caused a shock in the United States without exaggeration. Ben-Haz claimed responsibility for this terrorist attack. If you damn Americans don't get out of Afghanistan, the next base will look like this, Ben-Haz said arrogantly. After reading it, Lucifer just wanted to say that Ben-Haz really didn't know anything about the relationship. Originally, the Afghan U.S. military and America had never thought about completely eliminating the Tali version. After all, everyone knew that the Tali version was just Ami. An excuse for Rika, but now Ben-Haz took the initiative to jump out and slap America in the face, so whether it was for America's face or something else, he was dead. However, it is also possible that America will take advantage of the panic caused by this terrorist attack. Lucifer thought for a while, and it seemed that America was not at any loss. However, what people didn't expect was that the first ones to take action were not the generals and the Congress masters who had not yet reached a conclusion, but the Ten Rings Gang. The Ten Rings Gang naturally felt that Ben-Haz had broken the balance in Afghanistan, especially since this guy also attacked the US military base regardless of life and death and wiped out all the US troops stationed at the base. Although they did not know how he did it, this incident brought the consequences will be very serious. America might seize this opportunity and use terrorist attacks as an excuse to expand her influence and station troops in Afghanistan. That would definitely not be a good thing for the Ten Rings Gang. The Ten Rings Gang is very strong, but for America, it is far from enough for the country. Therefore, in order to avoid the above situation from happening, the Ten Rings Gang planned to kill Ben Hass and then disintegrate the Tali version, so that America would not have an excuse to expand its influence and garrison troops, but he didn't know what kind of power Ben Hass had obtained. Therefore, the Ten Rings Gang who acted rashly was quickly eliminated by Tali version. Ben Hass was arrogant to the extreme and declared that he would become the sole master of Afghanistan. The last one who was so arrogant seems to have died, and this unusual thing was also noticed by SHIELD, or Ben Hass had no intention of hiding it at all. The hunter was known by his men, and then it was spread that he had the support of the Lord. This 100 invulnerable, the monster with infinite strength is the subordinate whom the Lord has given him to punish everything. SHIELD was shocked when they saw the photo of Hunter. He looked very similar to Hulk, except that he was not wearing green, and there were 100 identical monsters. It seemed a bit reluctant to say that he was an alien, but he could only say that he was human. Mastered the technology to strengthen the human body. As for Ben Hass creating it himself, it's not that SHIELD looked down on Ben Hass, but that no one had this idea in their mind from the beginning, so SHIELD quickly focused on Ben Hass and the hunters. Hydra in SHIELD is much faster than SHIELD. The temptation of the hunter is too great, and Ben Hass cannot stop it. After attracting the attention of Hydra, outside Ben Hass's hiding place a missile crashed down, blasting a big hole in the ground. Then a group of people came to visit. Ben Hass really wanted the hunters to kill all these people, but his hiding place was found and he was threatened with a missile falling from the sky. As long as Ben Hass's brain is not what, he will never do this. Are these monsters? They are really powerful. I wonder if Mr. Ben Hass can tell me where they came from. That the man sent by Hydra was smiling and looked easy to talk to. He looked at the hunters around Ben Hass in amazement. He knew why Ben Hass didn't let the hunters tear them apart, and of course he wouldn't overstimulate him. Ben Hass glanced at him coldly. No matter who it was, his attitude would not be much better if his life was controlled by others. Don't worry, we just want to know where they came from, and then you can continue to be the uncrowned king of Afghanistan. This is a lie. In order not to expose Hydra, the second missile will fall on Ben Hass's head, which is enough to wipe him out with these monsters. Ben Hass still said nothing. Mr. Ben Hass, it's hard for us to do this. There are still 10 seconds before the second missile falls. I don't care, but your 11 wives, 5 sons and 2 daughters and yourself. Umbrella, Ben Hass said immediately. He didn't expect that his son and daughter were discovered even though they were hiding so tightly, not to mention that he didn't have to sacrifice his family's lives for Umbrella. Umbrella, the Hydra agent was confused. It was Umbrella Corporation. They contacted me and sold the hunter to me. Chapter 27, Stealing Boeing's Business. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Umbrella Company. The one whose president is Lucifer. This answer can be said to be beyond Hydra's expectations. After all, who would have thought that the genius who invented a super weapon, a new weapon that spanned the ages, would also develop an advanced product in another field? Just look at the records of these hunters. 5 monsters wiped out a fully armed US military base of more than 500 people, and not a single monster died. Without Air Force superiority, you can only rely on powerful weapons such as battleships. Only weapons such as naval guns and close-in defense guns can kill them. Yeah, it was that Umbrella Company, and they contacted me and said they had good weapons, and I went. Now that Ben Hass has spoken out, he will naturally not continue to hide it. $100 million for a hunter seems very expensive, but both Hydra and Ben Hass feel it is well worth the money. Can the manpower and weapons hired for $500 million be able to completely wipe out a US military base? Moreover, even the Ten Commandments gang was defeated. If Benhez hadn't been too arrogant and attracted the attention of Hydra, America might be happy to sing a double act with him and advocate Benhez threat theory. Thank you for your cooperation. After Hydra got what it wanted, it left. Ben Haas was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when the AC-130 air gunship hovering at high altitude poured a lot of firepower towards the place where Ben Haas was, and a heavy bomb fell from the sky with a loud bang, completely destroying the place. Vanished. Hunters naturally have no chance of surviving under such a terrifying blow. If they are super dangerous species, Tyrant may still survive and evolve, but they are only incomplete products. Interesting, Lucifer. Alexander Pierce thought thoughtfully after getting the information. Hydra is naturally very covetous of Umbrella Company and Lucifer. The problem is that Lucifer has a mysterious background and is not weak. In addition, he also has super weapons. With such a powerful and advanced weapon, Hydra had to think twice before taking action against him. However, now Lucifer has come up with something incredible. It is the product of the Human Body Enhancement Project at first glance, and it is also a monster that is mature and can be mass-produced, and its combat power is not weak at all. Alexander Pierce didn't know if there was a more powerful hunter in Lucifer, but as the saying goes, good things should be kept for oneself, and Lucifer might be hiding such good things. It doesn't seem to be very difficult to get a hunter. He thought about it and felt that since Lucifer would find someone like Benhez to make a deal, it meant that he might be short of money, or that he just wanted to make money, which is exactly what a qualified arms dealer thought. Therefore, Hydra can use other identities to trade with him. Hydra is very covetous of biological weapons like hunters and wants to obtain them for research. Even if nothing can be learned from the research, it can enhance their strength, so, before Lucifer could decide whether his next target would be the Ten Rings gang or European gangsters, Hydra came to the door. Of course, they pretended to be other free organizations in the Middle East. Of course Lucifer agreed to sell to them. After all, he intends to spread biological weapons secretly, so that more people will come to him. Super weapons are destined to be impossible to install and mass-produce because they are too expensive. Biological weapons are different. The price of $100 million can be said to be stuck at the key. I want to know if your company has any better products. That the people sent by Hydra saw that it was going so well, so they bought 20 hunters and asked Lucifer at the same time. Of course there is a biological weapon, Super Hunter, that is better than the Hunter, priced at $5 billion. Lucifer said affirmatively. Hydra was surprised. Is there really one? Of course there are better Super Hunters. Anyway, the difference between hunters and super hunters is only in the purity of Tyrant cells, and the super hunter is so stimulated that his right hand takes the form of a blade like Alex Mercer, and his left hand is huge. The deformed crab claws are like normal, and their lethality is much stronger than that of hunters. At the same time, the super hunter's body surface also has a carapace in the shape of Brother A's armor, and its defensive power is even more outrageous than that of a tank. Hydra was also very interested in the super hunter, so he bought one. They are not short of money anyway. Lucifer only did these business matters personally because he found them interesting. During this period, he also paid attention to Tony Stark's actions and found that the emergence of super weapons did make Tony Stark work hard, but it was a pity that he did not. In order to complete the production of the small arc reactor, the steel suit produced lacked energy. It's like destiny. Tony Stark must be able to knock out a small arc reactor at that moment, which has caused Tony Stark to be under great pressure recently. The power of the super weapon has been demonstrated in a military operation of the U.S. military. Major allies of the U.S. military began to come to purchase it. After determining that it could not be copied, the American military gave the Umbrella Company a huge order. They cancelled their order with Boeing for more than 900 Apache Longbow AH-64DS, and then used them to purchase super weapons, planning to use them as the main force of the army. To be honest, the emergence of super weapons has had the biggest impact on armed helicopters. Boeing has received a lot of terminated business this year, all of which were taken away by umbrella companies. Nowadays, the umbrella companies' super weapons are mainly exported to Egypt, Greece, Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom and other countries. As for Russia, the rabbits and America, of course, they are the countries that buy the most. When they were dismantling the super weapons, they found that the 3 small arc reactors that served as the power source were technically blocked. If they were opened forcibly, they might explode. That is a huge energy that is enough to meet the annual electricity consumption of a city. Once it explodes, the consequences will be disastrous, unless you get permission to open it. It seems that the super weapon can be used like a self-destructing truck, but no one may do so, because this thing is too precious, a self-destructing truck worth $10 billion, and those countries that bought the super weapon would be crazy to do so. As long as it is not opened, this thing will be very stable, and it will stop the reaction in time if it is destroyed. After all, it is a subroutine artificial intelligence guards controlled by the Black Emperor. Even Black-Skinned Egg from S.H.I.E.L.D. found a way to get a super weapon. Even though theoretically they shouldn't possess such dangerous weapons, but who is Black-Skinned Egg? He got it directly. Chapter 28 Buyout. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Of course, Hypeluden would never have thought that the super weapon he got was actually Hydra using it for private purposes. Even if Nick Fury made the procedure for deploying the super weapon very complicated and rigorous, the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically Hydra, so isn't it easy to deceive the superiors and the subordinates? General Thaddeus E. Ross recently received a strange news, that is, a successful and mature biological weapon appeared in the world. Although it is not as powerful as the Hulk, it has reached the standard of mass production and control. Who is Thaddeus E. Ross? Nicknamed General Thunderbolt, in the absence of news about the Hulk, he thought it would be a good idea to look for this biological weapon. In particular, Thaddeus E. Ross also got the actual situation of the U.S. military base that was attacked by the terrorist Ben Haas. Of course, this kind of military base is full of cameras. Fortunately, Ben Haas didn't understand these things during the destruction. He just asked his men to destroy most of the visible cameras, and the remaining cameras that were not seen clearly captured the scene of the hunter slaughtering. In the picture, the huge hunter moved quickly. It jumped high and landed on the roof of an infantry fighting vehicle. The impact caused the body of the infantry fighting vehicle to shake violently, and dust flew. Then the hunter grabbed the turret of the infantry fighting vehicle with both hands, and instantly burst out with great strength, directly breaking the latch between the turret and the body, and pulling out the entire turret together with the hanging basket and loader below. He threw the turret out casually, smashing a truck, and then jumped off the infantry fighting vehicle and grabbed the road wheel of another infantry fighting vehicle. The combat weight of the M2A5 is about more than 20 meters, but it was directly overturned by the hunter's terrifying strange power, rolling and crushing a military truck next to it into scrap metal. The hunter instantly raided and destroyed 2 infantry fighting vehicles that could pose a threat to him. Seeing this, Ross had already sat up straight. Go, die. An American soldier pulled the trigger at the hunter. The M4A1, produced under the authorization of Stark Industries, is well made. Some of the guns selected after screening can even be used as sniper rifles. However, these bullets cannot even break through the hunter's skin at close range, which reminds General Ross of the Hulk. This scene is so similar to the Hulk. Then the hunter broke into the American soldiers and set off a bloody storm. Almost no one could delay him for a moment. In a breath, the base was already dead and wounded. General Ross's eyes were full of fire. He felt that as long as he could get the technology of these monsters, then, however, it was obvious that this was impossible. America was not a waste. After getting the video, although Hydra found Ben Haas's hiding place before them and killed him, America still found several men who followed Ben Haas to trade. It's not that Hydra is unprofessional in silencing people, but they didn't expect that a person like Ben Haas would not silence them. Can this kind of thing be known to others? So they knew the source of the hunter, Umbrella Corporation. This company, or rather, the boss of this company, Lucifer, was already approached by the 3 major chaebol. America knew very well that they could not do anything to Lucifer. After all, there was no actual evidence to prove that those hunters came from the Umbrella Company. Even if Lucifer personally traded with Ben Haas, the powerful legal team of the Umbrella Company could distort it into a party program, and that person was pretending to be Ben Haas, and they could also find more than 100 witnesses that night, so America retreated to advance. It didn't matter if she couldn't move the Umbrella Company. Anyway, They wanted to move it when the super weapon came out, but they couldn't, let alone now. However, America said that they also had to have hunters. General Ross, hello. Lucifer actually knew about this matter. There was no way. In his position, there would be countless people trying their best to please him, not to mention this kind of thing. A favor from the umbrella company was more valuable than any money. Lucifer. Ross looked at the Asian in front of him, and he didn't know why the other party had such a status in a place like America, relying on the invention of superweapons. Don't joke. If you don't have a background and backing, such a thing will only be eaten up by others. But he is still fine now, and there are 3 major chaebols behind him. Even America can't do whatever he wants to him, so Ross is in a complicated mood. The other party can create enhanced people, and after they are made, they are not completely uncontrollable like the failed Hulk, but soldiers who obey orders rationally, which makes him very interested. Do you know what happened to you? General Ross threw out the video. I think you misunderstood, General. After watching the video, Lucifer was not scared by Ross's tough words. It was not me who attacked the base. I just sold a batch of weapons to a customer. As for what he would do with these weapons, I don't know. Even so, it still doesn't change the fact that you funded the enemy of the country. This has caused huge losses to the country. You must take the responsibility you should bear. Ross's performance now is more interesting. He actually believed the other party's words so easily and believed that the other party was not the mastermind of the attack. Although he emphasized that the other party should be responsible, what is the responsibility to be taken? Send him to a military court and accept a fair trial by law. Humph, if it were 30 years ago, Ross might have such a naive idea. Now he is used to all kinds of dirty deals, and he just uses this as a bargaining chip to force the other party to make greater concessions in the next possible cooperation. As for the dead soldiers, in his heart, if their sacrifice can bring greater benefits to the country, then it is worth it. Okay, General Ross, why don't we be direct? What do you, or America behind you, want? Lucifer said bluntly. Ross paused for a moment, and it really surprised him that Lucifer would be so direct. I want all your hunters, including the future ones, and America can pay twice the price to buy them, on the condition that you are not allowed to sell them to anyone except us. Ross doesn't like to beat around the bush, so he followed suit and stated his conditions: $200 million for a hunter, and it is a buyout, which is a normal thing for America. Deal. But Lucifer was more straightforward than he thought. Chapter 29: Kidnapping. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Lucifer could only say that they were too naive. Hunter was just a name. As long as Lucifer wanted, he could change it to another name at any time and then trade with others. Of course, in order to prevent America from being stimulated to the point of madness, Lucifer would adjust the appearance of Hunter to a certain extent, so that they would not look so similar. At night, when Tony Stark was hugging a woman, there was a sudden noise at the door, and then the door was kicked open. Ah, that the woman screamed in fear. The group of people who rushed and looked fully armed and looked difficult to mess with. Who are you? I don't remember inviting you to my party. Tony Stark was about to say something lewd, and then he was knocked unconscious by a gun butt. What about this woman? After the mercenaries knocked Tony Stark unconscious, they tied him up and looked at the woman. Take her back. The captain of the mercenaries said calmly. They couldn't leave any traces to the company, so the woman was also knocked unconscious and carried away on her shoulders. After the incident, the scene was blocked by the police, the military and agents. The SHIELD agents looked unhappy. The hotel's surveillance cameras lost all the footage of that period, and the guests who saw it in the hotel were all unconscious. There was no witness. Obviously, the person who did this was very cautious. And there should be a top hacker covering it. The surveillance cameras on the street also lost the footage of that period. Coulson reported to Nick Fury. Who do you think did it? Nick Fury had a headache and asked Coulson. I don't know, maybe those kidnappers who are eyeing the money of the Stark family. Coulson said that there were too few traces at the scene and there was no clue at all. After several days, Tony Stark's disappearance was made public. After all, Obadiah didn't want to affect the stock market of Stark Industries, but Lucifer had someone secretly expose this matter. This immediately affected the share price of Stark Industries. Tony Stark disappeared in America and has not been found until now. The entire New York City Police Department was scolded, and S.H.I.E.L.D. was no exception. Nick Fury arranged people to protect and monitor Tony Stark, but now Tony Stark is missing. Both the CIA and the FBI were dispatched urgently. For the first time, the two major internal and external intelligence departments went all out and joined forces to find out the reason for Tony Stark's disappearance and where he is now. In the original plot, Tony Stark disappeared in Afghanistan, which is completely different from his disappearance in America or in New York City. The enemy can kidnap a big chaebol like Tony Stark in America. Doesn't that mean that America has loopholes or defects in this regard? This is not a problem that can be ignored. The congressmen and those chaebols have joined forces to put pressure on them. Even their safety cannot be guaranteed. What is the meaning of America's existence? Tony Stark is missing today. Will it be Morgan's turn tomorrow? Will it be Rockefeller the day after tomorrow? This is a provocation. If America can't protect terrorists, why should they let America exist? For a time, the international situation was turbulent. America was like an enraged mad dog, biting people everywhere. Except for the two people in Europe and Asia who were watching the show with a smile, other countries were naturally affected to varying degrees, and the person involved, Mr. Tony Stark, was naturally sent to Afghanistan. He asked you to make a Jericho missile for him, and then he will let you go free. An elderly white man who replaced Ensign said to Tony Stark. Tony Stark looked at the boastful terrorist in front of him. He won't do that. Tony Stark knew this very well. After seeing how powerful he was in making missiles, these terrorists would only go further. Moreover, he was very surprised that his Jericho missile had just been successfully developed and he had not yet contacted the Ministry of Defense and the American military to sell Jericho missiles. Why did these terrorists far away in the Middle East know about this? The terrorist in the original plot was simply brain dead. He obviously knew nothing about the modern industrial assembly line. His cave even needed a diesel generator for power supply. His subordinates were all illiterate. Even if Tony Stark was tied to the electric chair, there was no way to turn him into a factory. Without stable power supply, cutting-edge production equipment, well-trained production line workers, and high-quality management personnel, it is impossible to mass-produce modern weapons. However, Lucifer said that brain deadness didn't matter. This proved that the other party was an ignorant Afghan terrorist, not someone pretending to be one. At the same time, Tony Stark also saw a lot of Stark Industries weapons in the terrorist base. What's going on? How could Stark Industries sell weapons to terrorists? Tony Stark was in a complicated mood. He knew that Stark Industries probably had a mole inside, and the level was not low. However, he didn't suspect Obadiah for the time being. Instead, he was thinking that he was kidnapped by terrorists and didn't know what kind of mess Stark Industries was in. Originally, Lucifer did not intend to let his men pretend to be terrorists, but if he handed Tony Stark over to the Ten Rings, he was worried that the Ten Rings would return. After all, the Ten Rings were very familiar with Obadiah, the insider of Stark Industries. Maybe after Obadiah knew about it, he would be cruel and let the Ten Rings kill Tony Stark. Obadiah actually had such a plan, especially after a genius like Lucifer appeared. Tony Stark could not copy the super weapon of the Umbrella Company. Geniuses are no longer only owned by Stark Industries. Now there is another Lucifer, who seems to be more talented than Tony Stark. Lucifer sent people to kidnap Tony Stark because he felt that the time was ripe and Iron Man could be born. At that time, with him so arrogantly attracting villains to jump out in front, Lucifer can reap the benefits. Of course, there are not many high-quality villains on Earth, and Lucifer feels that killing criminals will not gain much experience points. After killing a few powerful ones and solving the problem of Hydra, he should go to the universe to fight the Kree Empire, which is an empire of an entire galaxy. If he destroys it, he should be able to upgrade to level 10, right? Chapter 30 Bronski. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Follow the orders of Lucifer and these mercenaries pretending to be terrorists. They took Tony Stark out on time every day to show him the miserable conditions of ordinary civilians who were oppressed by terrorists who had obtained Stark's industrial weapons. Tony Stark went from being angry at the beginning, to anxious, and restless, and now to the stage of self-blame, regret, and pain. After all, Tony Stark always thought that his weapons were for counter-terrorism, but now they were obtained by terrorists and used to harm innocent people. This is also where Tony Stark is naturally different from other arms dealers. He still retains that rare innocence. It is not an accident that he became a hero, but the conditions already existed, but there was just a lack of activation. Lucifer was originally worried that Tony might not have reached that stage several years in advance and could not experience it. Now seeing Tony Stark's reaction, he knew he was worrying too much. Tony Stark becoming Iron Man was inevitable. But it will take some more training and let him suffer a little more. Tony Stark has not been recovered for many days, and there is not even any news. Most people have already assumed that Tony Stark may have been killed, because the kidnappers did not even make a call to extort money, and Stark Industries' stock price began to suffer. The impact was a slight decline before, but now it is a sharp decline. Like riding a roller coaster, Obadiah has smashed everything that can be smashed in the office. Every day when he opens his eyes, he sees the stock price of Stark Industries falling, which is so exciting that Obadiah almost suffers a stroke and cerebral hemorrhage. He is old and his heart cannot stand this stimulation, but the most important thing now is to find a way to stop losses. Although the inventions left by Tony Stark are enough for Stark Industries to last a lifetime, there are also many inventions owned by Tony Stark that cannot be used. It is the most valuable. So Obadiah targeted Umbrella Corporation. There is a new genius there. It would be great if Stark Industries could join forces with Umbrella Corporation. This is the new element discovered by Howard when he studied the Rubik's Cube. After Tony Stark disappeared, all his original things were collected, and Lucifer successfully obtained the map model and found new elements. If we go to space in the future, we cannot solve the energy problem. The new element reactor is just right. It can release a huge energy of 10 billion joules per second. This is a miniaturized new element reactor. It must be installed on a spacecraft. Use that huge reactor, then more energy can be generated. Moreover, as soon as the new element reactor is released, the production of super weapons and space battleships can begin. But we still have to solve the material problem first. Energy and materials are two indispensable parts of the history of scientific development. Theoretical science has reached a very scary level, but when it comes to practice, energy is not good, and materials are not good. If it were a Marvel universe with mutants, then Lucifer could go directly to find adamantium alloy, which is the hardest alloy. Even the God of the universe once created an adamantium alloy wall to resist attacks. Although this resulted in the God of the universe's strength suddenly disappearing, adamantium alloy, which can be made with just a simple molecular structure, can actually help resist attacks. If it is really the master of the universe, wouldn't it be better to use neutron star material? After all, neutron star material is more powerful than adamantium alloy anyway. And now because there is no adamantium alloy, the vibranium from Wakanda can only be used to create spaceships and space versions of super weapons. Fortunately, there are now leopards smuggling vibranium from Wakanda, and problems that can be solved with money are not a problem for Lucifer. Isn't it just $50,000 per gram? It's very cheap. If Lucifer were to sell it, it would cost at least $1 million per gram. General, we have information about that man. For General Ross, the Umbrella Company happily delivered 100 hunters to him, and General Ross also tried it and felt very satisfied. These hunters were just as obedient, but smarter and much more powerful than dogs. Which person? Is it him? General Ross didn't react at first, but then he became excited immediately after he reacted. Where? Brazil. The intelligence officer quickly reported the address. General Ross thought about it. Now that he had a powerful biological weapon like 100 hunters, the possibility of capturing the Hulk became even greater, so he set off immediately without hesitation. All this was spread within the hunter's sight, and the Black Emperor told Lucifer after analyzing the information obtained by the hunter. Found the Hulk. Lucifer only knew that when Hulk appeared, it seemed that Stan Lee drank a bottle of drink with Hulk's blood. As a result, the radiation was so severe that it attracted the attention of the military. It can only be said that it really stole the spotlight in all aspects. People don't know whether to watch Stan Lee or Hulk first. Maybe it's another step into the Hulk. Lucifer doesn't think it must be Stan Lee, but it could also be the Hulk dog plot, thinking that those Hulk dogs not only maintain the obedience and sensitivity of dogs, but could even bite the Hulk. Although tyrant cells can also do it, Lucifer felt that he still had to get Hulk cells to see. I hope it won't involve the OBA under all things, otherwise nothing can be researched. After all, it is said in the comics that Hulk's power comes from the OBA beneath all things. General Ross also brought someone with him on this trip, Emil Blonsky. He originally played for the Royal Marines, but is now said to be on loan, and then became a member of General Ross. Mainland United States, Special Base. General Ross was holding a resume and said to an officer with a sinister face, "Emil Blonsky, Major, why are you still a major? Looking at your resume, you should have been promoted long ago." Ross was very surprised. Emil Blonsky was a very good soldier. He had served for many years, participated in many battles, and had outstanding merits. Logically speaking, he should have been promoted to lieutenant colonel or even colonel. "I like fighting, sir." Emil Blonsky answered with his hands behind his back. Major is the highest military rank that can personally participate in combat. If you are promoted further, you can only stay in the headquarters and be responsible for commanding. Like fighting? A born warrior. Ross declined to comment. "Ready to go. I hope you won't disappoint me, Major." General Ross said that Emil Blonsky was the trump card he had originally prepared, but now that he has a hunter, he doesn't care much about it. Of course, it would be best if there is no need to dispatch a hunter.